It's time for Bourbon with Friends, the bourbon podcast that never takes itself too seriously. Pull up a chair, grab a glass, and remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bourbon with Friends. Myself, Adrian, and Martin are here to talk about whiskeys from around the world and how a bourbon with friends can change the world. How are you guys doing? Good?
Good, man.
Bad?
Yeah.
Real
How are
good.
you?
Nice.
Good or bad. One of those.
It's been a whirlwind.
I know, man. Why don't you talk a little bit about it? Your little summer fling.
My summer fling going to North Dakota for my nonprofit.
Yeah,
it was a fun time. Went up there, sold a bunch of shirts and hoodies and tank tops, and made some money to bring some more veterans out and take them hunting and fishing around the world. So
nice.
That was fun.
You saw some country stars.
A few people, yes.
Some country music up there.
Yeah, it was a fun time. Got to go backstage and meet a few of them, and then have lunch with a couple of them. So
cool. Who was it? I'm trying to get you to name drop. Is what I'm trying to do here.
I know I'm not going to do it though.
Yeah.
You saw. There's a reason I didn't post about it and just put it to certain groups. That was about it.
No, there was one that you told me, and I tried to remember it, and I butchered the name, and I was ridiculed for it. I can't remember the name of it now.
War Hippies.
No, I like that one.
Yeah, War Hippies is one of them. I'm just not gonna.
That was a guy.
That is a guy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
How many of them? Like how many hippies?
2.
That's plural. I like that. But that's it sounded like a good time. I saw some of the pictures that you were posting about it. Yeah, it looked like a good old summer, good old summer concert.
Yeah, nice summer work trip that I got drunk at once or twice.
That's probably a fun time.
I'd have been bummed out if you said you didn't. So
no, it happened.
Well, I guess we should talk a little bit about bourbon. This is Bourbon with Friends. But specifically the Summer of Bourbon with our friends at Lost Lantern. What's going on, Nora and Adam? How are you all doing?
Hey, it's great. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like I told you, I do not think about those things before I start saying them. They think I plan it, but I really don't.
No, you can't plan everything.
No,
they can't.
So, all right.
I wanted him to name drop too, but he wouldn't do it.
Don't worry.
After the recording. After
some of these higher proof things, we'll get him to talk. Don't worry.
All right. Well, I'll get us started. I think. For those of you out there who might not know, Lost Lantern is an independent bottler, and we're going to try really hard not to ask too many repetitive questions. But I would like to start out by just asking you to say who you both are and what you do with Lost Lantern.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Nora. I'm the general manager of Lost Lantern, which means that and co-founder. You're right. Co-founder. That I manage the humans and operations, and also I do a lot of the blending and production stuff as well. So.
I'm Adam. I'm the other co-founder. I'm the head of whiskey sourcing and former whiskey journalist. So I'm the pretty face, and Nora does all the real work.
That's great. What do you think makes Lost Lantern unique? And I had a friend tell me that I needed to ask where you guys came up with your name.
You came up with the name. Go for it.
So I guess the name comes from what we do, which is we work with small distilleries all around the country. We're not a distillery. We never will be. And instead of making our own whiskey, we buy whiskey from small distilleries and help people discover things that they might not ever know about otherwise. We've sourced whiskey from more than 30 distilleries in 20 different states. Everything we've ever put out has the distillery name, whether it's from one distillery or a blend of multiple. It's the name of the distilleries are right on the front label. So it's totally transparent. And we want to get people excited about some of these hidden gems out there. And that's where the name comes from. Lost Lantern is about shining a light on whiskeys that would otherwise not be discovered.
That's great. I love that.
It is
Shining a
super cool.
light.
Well, I'm jealous. That's
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's just off the back of that, just thinking about real quick. I like that. So you guys, I'm certain you guys know who the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is, and they sort of like hide their distilleries in a way. I mean, they still want you to figure out what they are, but they kind of taken away preconceived notions of what it is. I like how you guys are like, no, we want to shine a light specifically on them. So I think that's such a kind of a cool approach to it.
Exactly. And there's so many distilleries around the US now. There are more than 2,600, and 90% of them have opened in the last 15 years or so. So obviously everybody who's into bourbon knows the big places in Kentucky, but there are so many other places that are now making wonderful whiskey and places that never made
work at one
before. Yeah. Exactly. There you go. And we want to help people find those and get their hands on them. So the transparency is really important to us because we want people to say, hey, I discovered this great distillery through Lost Lantern. Now I'm going to go buy some of that distillery's own stuff and hopefully become a lifelong fan.
That's so cool. I love that. Nora, you just mentioned blending. So have you guys, and these guys may already know the answer to this, but I don't. Have you done a lot of blending like in the past? Is it something that you do a lot of?
So for I've never blended before Lost Lantern, but we do a good amount of blending at Lost Lantern. So we either blend whiskey from the same distillery. We've done what we call our single distillery series, is us taking multiple barrels from one distillery and blending that together to highlight an aspect of that distillery that people don't get to see otherwise. So it's different than the standard release, but multiple barrels in a larger size. And we also do our blend series, which is multiple distilleries whiskey blended together to showcase either a flavor profile, a style of whiskey, or a region in an entirely new way. I know you all I believe you have our Flung Bourbon II, and that is a blend from 5 distilleries across 5 states. And that's to showcase in one sip what the landscape of American bourbon tastes like across the country. So we do a decent amount of that. I don't have a background in blending, which means it takes me a long time, and we both have very trained palates. And so that's what we count on. We'll iterate on the blend, and we're building instincts. We've been building instincts over the last few years, but when it comes down to it, we taste it and we try again until it gets to the right point.
Yeah, I'm just very, very interested in that. I'm finding that blending and blends are just kind of a more interesting thing. To kind of piggyback off of what Martin said earlier about SMWS, did you have any inspiration? Were there any independent bottlers that kind of inspired you?
Yes. And we are 100% pulling from the Scotch tradition. That is the inspiration. We actually, when we started Lost Lantern, it came out of many years of us complaining about how there wasn't a Scotch style IB focusing on American whiskey. And then eventually that conversation evolved from, it's really annoying that this doesn't exist, to someone's definitely going to do this soon, to, hey, maybe we have the right backgrounds to do this, to here we are. For us, I mean, Douglas Lang, which does both cask picks and blending with their regional malt lineup, like that very much has always been a North Star for us. But we also love what Black Adder does. And they're a small family business as well. Like, we're married. And so we actually, early days, I guess during the pandemic, we did a Zoom call with them to ask for advice, because we know that they've been there and done everything that we're trying to do here in the US. And then obviously like the classics like Gordon MacPhail and Signatory and all the greats, Cadenhead. And for us, like, we both come from the industry. We've spent a lot of time drinking Scotch. We also drink bourbon a lot. So it's all coming from that tradition. And every once in a while you'll see a hat tip. And whether sometimes it's an Easter egg, but sometimes it's more obvious that it's a direct hat tip to those Scottish IBs.
Now I'm gonna be keeping my eye out for something like that.
Well, the Rocktown that we did is actually a hat tip to SMWS, because
is it really?
Because for a number of Scotch IBs, Rocktown was the first bourbon that they did. So there's an SMWS Rocktown 2014.
Yeah,
something like that.
They're I mean, SMWS doesn't say, but I can say.
Yeah, you can say.
They're SMWS bourbon number 3. So,
Okay.
like number 1 is Heaven Hill, I think.
yeah,
Number
right.
2 is like, I don't know, George Stickler or some other big distillery.
The first craft
And then
bourbon.
the first craft, and they've done more than 10 Rocktown releases over the last 10 years. And this relatively small Arkansas distillery was one of the first places to get on the European radar, which I think is so interesting because people in the US don't really know it.
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, you could probably ask a bunch of people who are like big bourbon heads, and they would never have heard of Rocktown. I knew them through that same connection through SMWS, and I liked it. I know that they say that their distillery list is like the worst kept secret in like all of whiskey, because like everybody has a list of what distilleries are what, or you memorize them or you found out. But yeah, it's really cool. I like that you guys kind of took inspiration from those, because I'm a single malt drinker first. I like bourbon, but single malt Scotch was kind of where I started. So I found out about you all because of knowing about independent bottlers. I kept thinking, like, why isn't anyone doing this? Like, there has to be. And then literally, I think it was one of the first bottles I ever got of your guys's, which was Gentle Giant from Balcones. Because like I'm such a Balcones fan, all of a sudden it popped up on thing. I'm like, okay, now I need to know everything about Lost Lantern. And then I befriended Germ, and he just took me on a trip. So it's like
Germ's how I found out about it.
Yeah.
About it. Yeah.
So very good advocate, but no, it's really cool. Yeah, I really do like what you guys are doing. It's cool, and I think it's gonna shine a spotlight, especially with the boom in American single malts happening right now as well. So I think that's gonna be a lot of fun.
And we love American single malt, but this summer, as we did last summer, we decided we wanted to celebrate bourbon, because early on we found that some people thought that we only did American single malt because we were IB, modeled on the Scotch tradition. So we'd done bourbon all along. Our very first release included a bourbon, a corn whiskey, single malt, and a vatted malt. But our last year we did our first Summer of Bourbon collection with the message that great bourbon now comes from all across the United States, both to showcase that and also to show people definitively, like, we do all kinds of American whiskey, not just single malt. And we did it again this year with 7 whiskeys from 9 whiskeys. 7 single casks, and from all across the country. And it's been really exciting to see the reaction to that so far.
We should try one of those right now. Don't you guys think we should get started on one?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll drink something.
Yeah, I haven't started yet.
I don't know which one are you guys going to do? I'll do the same one.
The one
in your hand.
In one of my is Missippii Memory.
Ooh, that's the one I really want to try.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go grab you to explain
Okay.
the story.
Yeah. Do you want us to explain what the heck this is?
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Great.
So Missippii Memory is a single distillery series bourbon. So that's we blend multiple barrels together from one distillery, but this is unique because this is our first ghost distillery release. So Rich Grain Distilling, based in Mississippi, went out of business in 2020. During the pandemic, they just threw in the towel, and then we ended up buying all of their remaining inventory in 2021, and it had just been aging there. It's 140 proof, 70%. We're starting on strong.
Good thing they've been drinking already,
right?
So
But like the Mississippi climate is hot and wet, and it's not like a climate that you normally get bourbon from. So it's a really, really unique profile. The other thing worth noting is, so this is 5 and 7 year whiskey. It's both high rye and a wheated bourbon mash bill blended together. But when we got these barrels, they were in 15-gallon barrels, and we got them and they were on the way to being over extracted, especially the oldest ones. And so our production person made the suggestion, because he was like, what do? We need to stop this. We actually rebarreled them in 53-gallon barrels, and it pulled a ex-bourbon. Yeah.
Okay.
53-gallon barrels. Like other bourbon that we had dumped, we popped it in barrels that we had just dumped, and it pulled so much of the tannin back out. Like, it's still a big bourbon, it's still tannic, but we felt like it was miraculous that those whiskeys really chilled out, relatively speaking. And then to make this, we blended those married 53-gallon barrels we pulled from a number of them to build this.
I can see why it's very good.
It's insane.
It's very, very good.
Like, and it actually doesn't. I mean, I don't know if maybe it's just I've drank a lot of whiskey this weekend, but it doesn't really. It doesn't hit for. It doesn't feel 70%. I don't know. It does. Obviously, I think if somebody else was to taste this, it'd be like, wow, this is spicy.
It's not on the tongue. The heat's not on the tongue. It's definitely in the finish.
But there's so much flavor. There's like so much flavor that sits on top of like the drying tannic like aspects of it that it's like it just works. And I think that's my favorite thing with any kind of whiskey. But it's just once it works, even if there's something that somebody might find like a little bit crazy, like a higher proof or something that is just very tannic. But it's like you're like, no, it works for that. Because that south heat does something to whiskey.
It really does.
It does. Yeah. And it's so, I feel like it's so funky in like an almost rum-like way for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you get that kind of funk to it. It's still obviously bourbon.
Yeah.
But there is something that like if I was blind tasting this, I would be like, is this some really weird rum? Like what is this? Like a bourbon barrel? Like which I find endlessly fascinating, and it was really fun to blend with for that reason. And we could have leaned more into that profile and decided to like reel it back very slightly, but I think it's still there.
And
have you guys ever had like a cucumber pickled shot before?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You're almost getting a citrus flavor out of it, but do you like pickles?
Yes. I love pickles.
The pickle juice out of that, take out the pickle juice, add a little like spice to it, a little pepper.
I see it.
That's what I'm getting like right on the mid palate with this. And it's really unique.
Super unique.
And I want to drink the whole thing tonight, but I have to work in the morning.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Man, that's
it
so
really
good.
is. Yeah. I'm the same with you guys. I run a distillery as well. So
well, to us, it's really special that this is a distillery that isn't around anymore, and that we wanted to honor what the founder was trying to do. When we worked directly with him, he's still around. He still owns the building. Just had to shut down the business, but wanted to showcase like, okay, even if you didn't get where you wanted to get with the distillery, here's a way you can still get your whiskey out to people and have people be excited about it and talk about something that they would otherwise just never be known about. I don't know what would have happened to it otherwise, but it feels really important to us to be able to do that and a clear proof of what we're trying to do.
So even like in the beginning, like when you guys first started approaching distillers, like was there a lot of challenges in that?
Yes and no. I mean, the nice thing, so I always give this answer because he would never say this. So he wrote for Whiskey Advocate. He was their craft spirit specialist. He reviewed a lot of the distilleries we ended up working with and wrote about them, and was often the first person to take them really seriously from a media perspective. And so when then he turned it like on to the other side, if you will, and went to them and said, I want to buy whiskey. This is what I'm doing. They already knew that we would do their whiskey justice and that we would respect it in a way that I think coming fresh, just some random person, it would take a lot longer. It still has been like some distillers we worked with, it's taken years for them to be willing to let us put their name on the label. But I think that by and large, it was easier than we expected with some exceptions, because when people understand, our job is to talk about how awesome they are. Yeah. So as soon as people understand that that's what we're doing, it becomes a relatively easy conversation. But I think at the beginning, it would have been much harder when we didn't have name recognition in the industry to convince people to drink whiskey.
I was thinking that. I was like, I bet the more you've done, the easier it kind of gets.
Yeah.
We also decided pretty early on that like we didn't want to just be living in Brooklyn, which is where we were at the time, and emailing people and being like, send us samples and maybe we'll buy some barrels. Like we wanted to show we really had our skin in the game. So and we were kind of tired of living in New York too. So we left the city and took an 8-month road trip around the country to visit distilleries, and decided that we would only ever work with a place that we visited in person. And so like I've been to Arkansas to visit Rocktown, and been to Kansas to see Union Horse, and South Carolina. And actually the Missippii distillery is the only place that we ever worked with that we haven't visited, because I offered to go down there and it was like, you can come, but there's nothing to see. It's just a warehouse. All the equipment is long gone. So we're like, all right, that's an exception if it's closed. But otherwise, that really shows people that we're taking this seriously. We want to understand what they're doing, why they make the choices they make, who they are as people, why their whiskey tastes the way it does. And also early on, there were people who really wanted us to succeed. Like we went to Jared, the head distiller at Balcones, and told him, hey, we want to start an independent bottler. And he basically was like, sweet, how can I help?
Right.
I've wanted this to happen for a long time.
Yeah. Well, because for a long time, Balcones had the biggest SMWS collection in the state of Texas. Like they're big IB heads. And so they were super excited that someone was trying to do this thing with a focus on American whiskey. So they've always been really game, and often our test case, like our first single distillery series blend, was that Gentle Giant, where we went down and they basically set out 100 samples for us to play with. And they were like, we trust you, go for it.
Yep.
And a lot of distilleries would not do that. And it was definitely a long 2 days to go from 100 samples down to the 5 that we ended up using. But that kind of trust, also people hearing that they were working with us, definitely made other people feel more confident in working with us as well.
Absolutely. I went to Gabe and Alex like immediately when I saw that pop up. I'm like, tell me about this. What is this? And they know that I'm in love with Mirador. So they told me a little bit about where some of the stuff came from. And I'm like, yep, literally ordered it with like 3 minutes later. Like, I still have it because I don't want to go through all of it. I love that one. It's like one that I go to every once in a while. It's just such the brandy finish, the brandy cask in it. It's amazing. I love that one so much.
Yeah. One of our favorites too, especially one of my personal favorites. And I also love Mirador, one of my favorite American in the country.
Well, then let's go into this question, because it's kind of goes off of your favorite, right? So what's your favorite whiskey memory that you've had doing this job so far, or just in general?
Well, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in general, that Glenfarclas tour we did was pretty memorable. Because he was writing for Whiskey Advocate at the time, we were in Scotland for family stuff. And of course we made some time for whiskey, and we got a chance to do the Glenfarclas five decades tour, where you did the tour, and it was amazing. And it was mostly industry people. There were people from SMWS on the tour with us, and then some high rollers from Canada. Little did we know that we actually recently re-met one of the guys from SMWS who remembered us from the tour, which is like small world. Wow. But because it was mostly industry, the tour guide was just like, okay, what's your birthday year? What's your birthday year? What's your birthday year? And just like tasting those. And Glenfarclas is one of my personal favorites. So that was definitely a core memory for me.
One of my general ones is also kind of similar, and that involves getting to drink old and special whiskey. Is when my coworker at the time and I were first, quote unquote, initiated into Whiskey Advocate. We got to go to the company's cigar lounge. They also owned Cigar Aficionado. And had with the whole editorial team, and we were the kind of the first new editors to come on staff in a long time. So they really wanted to celebrate that with us and kind of mark the transition of the company in a number of ways. And they had gotten some people to send over a bottle of Port Ellen 40-year-old, Aurora 38-year-old, Cambliss 40-year-old, some like multi-$1,000 scotches. Yeah. But the great thing about it was not just that we got to taste them, is that we actually drank them. Like we drank them the way that you will drink a bottle of anything else that's special and you're excited to drink and share with friends. Not just like a small tasting, you get one sip of it, that's the only time you'll ever try it. But like, I probably had like 3 or 4 glasses of it, of Port Ellen. I was like, I'm enjoying this whiskey the way it was meant to be enjoyed, and the way that people rarely get to actually do, because it's ludicrously expensive.
It's insane.
It was, Adam, we need to be friends.
Yeah. I get that question a lot, like from people, like, what's your white whale bottle? And I don't, for a long time, I didn't really think I had one, but then I realized that I did, and it really would be like a 30-year-old Brora. Because Clynelish is like one of my favorite distilleries, and it's got it's built upon. So it's just that profile is like exactly what I want in whiskey. So I'm jealous is what I'm trying to say right now.
Same. I'm jealous too. I was not there.
I've had Brora, but it was like flora and fauna stuff. But
I think like from a Lost Lantern perspective, for me, it's the times that we went to distilleries and did the single distillery series blends on site. We did that with Balcones. We did that with Frey Ranch in Nevada. We did that with Whiskey Del Bach in Arizona. And they're so different because we plug into their process. So we say, how do you blend? How do you do this? And with Balcones, it was like, here's 100 things, go to town, we'll taste when you're ready. And then at Frey Ranch, it was totally different experience. At Whiskey Del Bach, it was a much smaller.
St. George.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And St. George in Alameda. And like getting that experience where we're basically participating in their blending process for 2 days. We learn a ton. For me, it's like I'm trying to be a sponge, but also just getting to see how a blending team functions is fascinating because we don't think about that generally. Like I feel like the industry doesn't talk about that much. Mm-hmm. We talk about distilling in great depth and fermentation, but the way that people think about blending and talk about putting something together is so incredibly different distillery to distillery that's been probably my favorite thing to do throughout the process is just get those different snapshots into how different places function.
I'd love to be on a blending team. Like that's like, I mean, I do it anyways here. Just like I'll take random bottles and just like play with things. And I'm just like, I'd love one day to just actually be able to do like a blending thing. That's just probably one of my biggest like whiskey things I still have not been able to do. So yeah.
I need to bring you guys out here.
I feel like I would never stop though. Like I don't know, like I would keep going. Like that's not done. There's got to be something else I can add to this or blend in or do. I feel like I would be too crazy with it probably. So
it's actually probably the hardest part is knowing when to stop. And like, should I keep tweaking this for another 2 weeks to make it 2% better, or will I actually make it 7% worse?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of confidence that we're still developing to know like, okay, this is where it needs to be. And this is really good and people will enjoy it. And just, okay, we're ready to move. Yeah. Sometimes it's especially hard if you don't have a firm deadline. Like if it's like, this needs to ship by X date, you can work with that. If it's like, we need to put this together and then when it's done, we'll release it. That's really, really hard.
Well, I can say you guys have done a phenomenal job in getting your product out there and selling it faster than I've seen in a very long time. So congratulations, first and foremost. And wow, second. It's amazing.
So, Nora, you were talking about learning about blending and learning from all these different places. And so do you have like an ideal place, a dream kind of place that you would like to work with, distillery that you would want to go to?
We've worked with basically our dream distilleries in the U.S. so far, which is exciting. I mean, obviously, when I think about Scotch, I'm like, I like when John Glazer was still at Compass Box, sitting like being a fly on the wall and watching him blend would obviously be a dream, which now will never happen because he's not there anymore. But like, talk about someone who really understood how to blend in a really innovative way, like North Star. Also for us from a blending perspective. But I think I think it
would certainly be fun to play with whiskey from the big Kentucky distilleries, which we've never done. And I expect probably at some point down the road we'll likely do, but it's so much a part of what we talk about is that great bourbon now comes from all over the place. I don't think we're never going to switch over totally to doing that. It's always going to be like, here's a great family-owned distillery in Kentucky with 100 years of heritage. It's called Heaven Hill. There's another great one in Nevada with 100 years of heritage called Frey Ranch. Totally different.
Oh, my goodness.
And so it's going to take some convincing for them to let us treat, because we want to treat everyone exactly the same. So,
Well, I mean, like I said, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And I have zero words of anything because it's just great.
Yeah.
So this is the part of the show where we ask a random question. If you guys haven't listened to the show before, we ask a question about a squirrel in some way, fashion, or form, just to throw you off.
Okay.
To get your brain thinking in a different direction. And Adam, as a writer, that sometimes that is the best way to get back into something is think something else randomly and get back into the work afterwards.
I think I need more whiskey for this.
Yeah,
You're
perfect.
not wrong.
No,
You're not wrong.
for this one, you're gonna need it.
This isn't the weirdest squirrel question we've ever asked. To be fair,
Okay.
like it came from a joke. Like when on our very first episode, like once we became hosts, Bourbon with Friends. I don't even remember how it started, but then it became a thing where we had to do it every episode. So some of them have been really fucking weird, but like this one's not that weird.
No, it's
no pressure.
Adrian, I changed up the squirrel question from the last one because I didn't want it to just be about nuts, and not the nuts you're thinking about.
Gonna do that.
So, what distillery would you think a squirrel would work in that produces AMS? ASM.
AMS.
That's a disease.
American malt.
Let's go with American single malt, not the other way around.
That's a good question. I can't believe I've never been asked that before.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first after saying that.
Yeah.
I think that, I need some of this whiskey. I'm going to have a sip of the Union Horse, the Kansas bourbon, while I think about this for a second.
Enjoyed that one. I did try that one already. That one was very good.
A David Pickerel distillery. He helped get them started in Kansas many years ago when he was still with us. I have like the idea floating in my mind, but I'm trying to like pin down exactly where it is. And I feel like my answer is going to be, you're still going to make me go first.
Yeah.
I think it would actually probably be Balcones because there are so many hidden secret things in that warehouse whiskey wise that like I feel like a squirrel would have an amazing time like rediscovering like here's a nut that I hid years ago and completely forgot about, finished in some very strange cask, maybe probably whiskey finished in a big acorn somewhere. But I feel like squirrels like lots of little secret hidden things, and that's a good place for it. It's my answer.
Well, it's interesting because I was going to say Boulder Spirits because, like, as kind of a segue to our Armagnac finished cask for similar reasoning that they're like squirrels are squirrely. That's kind of an obvious thing, but like, they hide things. They don't necessarily like. I think also like there's a funkiness to squirrels, and Boulder Spirits does like a bourbon for Scotch drinkers and a single malt for bourbon drinkers, and I think that there's something about that that's like a hidden agenda which feels kind of squirrel like. So, and like I adore their whiskey, but also that like the Armagnac finish which they did and had no idea what to do with, and they called us up and said, we don't do small label runs, like please take this barrel, I really want to sell it to you, will you please take it? Like feels like that hidden acorn in their warehouse that they discovered and wanted to sell to us. It's also
I love that answer. You guys are great storytellers,
and
I could talk to you guys forever.
and an accurate one, because if you've ever been to, you guys have been there, so like they've got that little area like where the tasting room is, and they open up, it's like that kind of like bay door, the dock door. There was like two squirrels that, like when I was sitting there one time, that were just like playing right in front of there. So
it's as if I saw that.
I just remember looking over, and I'm like, Ryan, what are they doing? He's like, they look fine. But
it's kind of great because both you guys reference nuts in both your distilleries, acorns, literally. So that's phenomenal. So it's a bit of a nutty situation.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
What?
I like what you did there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess back to whiskey. I'm actually on the Flung, and
I was gonna say let's try that Flung, and I did see that you guys won platinum at the Ascot Awards for that, right?
Nice.
I thought that was awesome.
No, yeah, you're right. That was the rye. That was the rye.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
this just came out.
This just came out. You're right.
Okay.
This is Flung Bourbon II. It's also worth noting. We did Flung Bourbon 1 last summer, and then this is 2. And and our Flung, it's batch process and is designed to showcase how great bourbon comes from all across the country. You can taste the landscape of bourbon in one sip, all of that. But it does change. Like our Flung Bourbon 1, totally different distilleries than Flung Bourbon 2. And it's in some ways also the best bourbon that we can make with what's currently in our inventory. And because of our model, we're constantly moving through different things. So it'll also signal the evolution of what Lost Lantern is working on. As we go, like we're working on Flung Bourbon 3 right now, and it's
cool.
Then again different.
And we want it to be a little different than any single distillery's whiskey would be on its own. So that's the point of blending, is that you have whiskey from one place that reflects that climate, another place that reflects its climate. Then what if you bring them together? It could be great on their own and then great in a different way together. So this particular blend is 5 distilleries. It has some whiskey from Rich Grain Distilling, the closed distillery in Mississippi. Also has some Starlight from Indiana, some Wollersheim bourbon from Wisconsin, Smooth Ambler from West Virginia, their West Virginia distillate. They've obviously sourced for a long time, but also make their own whiskey, which is wonderful, and Kings County from New York. For this particular one, they all happen to be east of the Mississippi. First one, they were like all over the country. Every blend will be a little bit different.
It's just, whatever works, whatever plays well together.
It does. And it's crazy. Starlight's probably one of my favorite distilleries, not just because I'm from Indiana, but like I find it in this whiskey. You know what I mean? Like I find it like immediately the first one I go to, but then I start to get the other ones. And actually aging it myself will be at Wollersheim in 2 weeks.
Nice.
So we're going up to Driftless Glen, and then we're going up there as well. So we're getting to hang out there. But it's really good. You guys are just doing some amazing blends. I wish more people embrace blends. I think that there was like a little bit of that negative connotation, especially in Scotland. People just were not into blends, but some of the ones I've had, obviously Compass Box being some of my favorite. I got a lot of these bourbon drinkers. I had them. They're like, okay, Martin, like, what should I get? And then I say a blend straight away, like single malt, like what? Or it's like a blend, and it was what was it? Orchard House.
Orchard House, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like now all the bourbon drinkers, I gotta get that. It's amazing. I'm like, yeah, it's weird. Like it's really, really good. I told you guys. But speaking of, so back to when you guys said about it, there is a dream distillery I want you guys to work with, but I'm not gonna say it because they'll make fun of me because they already know what I'm gonna say.
I do know what you're gonna say.
Shut your dirty horse.
It's all I'll say is it's in Alabama. That's all I'll say. So I would love to see you guys do something with them. But I know this is sort of almost like probably not a now thing, but maybe in the future, because I'm sure the logistics are difficult. But is there ever a time where you would do Scottish distilleries?
Yes. But we would have to do it the exact same way that we do now, which is a big hurdle where we buy directly from the distilleries. And a lot of people don't know that independent bottlers in Scotland, except for the really old ones, they buy mostly from brokers. And so that understanding of the underlying whiskey, where it comes from, it's just different. It's a system that's grown out of many, many, many years of that. And for us, we're really only interested in doing it if we're buying directly from the distillery.
Okay.
And would have to visit them in person too. And it's hard enough to get to Arkansas from Vermont. It's even harder to get to like the Isle of Raasay or like Harris and Tweed and something like that.
Oh no, it can't be that hard.
It's like we were trying to map it at one point. We're like, I think this is like 4 flights.
Yep.
But
in a ferry ride, I'm sure at some point you have to get on a ferry.
Well, technically you could do it in 1 flight and then 2 trains and then a ferry.
Yeah, that's not hard at all to do that.
Yeah, if I remember
the transportation.
I'm going to shut up now because I just realized that was awful.
Okay, I have one more question. I have one more question. So you mentioned the future of Lost Lantern when you were talking about the Far Flung blend. And I'm just curious. Excuse me. I'm just curious, what does the next 5 years look like? Is there anything that looks a little different on the horizon, you think? Or...
Yeah,
it's a good question. It's a totally good question.
We're both like looking at each other and
like, maybe I shouldn't ask that.
So we have 2 big things in the works that we haven't talked about, and we won't today. But there are some like interesting flagships that we have coming down the way.
Yeah. But along the way, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is explore different kinds of blends. Like we've done bourbon blend, we've done a peated blended malt. We've done a mesquite smoke blended malt, trying to push the boundaries of what people are talking about with American whiskey, while continuing to highlight distilleries from across the country. Like the Summer of Bourbon this time had 5 new distilleries for us from 4 new states, and continue to explore what those regional differences are like, and really to try to get people to talk about them. We've done 1 regional blend so far. Our Flung rye was a blend of ryes from across the Midwest, because we think that the Midwest makes some of the best rye in the country, because that's where you grow rye. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we think there's a lot more opportunity for that too. And we're a small company. We're still in our early days, but we are trying to push the conversation around whiskey in certain directions, so that talking about a sense of place and things like that. And I hope people will continue to embrace that.
Absolutely. The PETA one, was at McCarthy's?
It was McCarthy's, Boulder, Cedar Ridge.
That's right. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Old
Murphy Quint doing good things over there.
Yeah, we love Cedar Ridge is one of our core partners, and we love McCarthy's. That was McCarthy's and Cedar Ridge were on our initial list, where we're like, these are the places that make us believe that it is time for an independent bottler, because like Cedar Ridge is, at one point they were distributed more broadly, but now they're really primarily only in Iowa, and but still, and it's crazy that they're the best. They have the best selling bourbon in Iowa, and people on the East Coast and West Coast have never heard of them. I mean, less so these days because of Quintessential and all the media coverage that they've been getting. But still, I mean, McCarthy's still no one knows how brilliant that is, and that's been brilliant for 20 years.
Yeah.
So yeah,
one of the first American single malts out there. I mean, it's crazy that it's taken that long. And actually just had some Quintessential this week, and I've had a couple of different ones. The best is the biscuit malt, I think they put out a couple of years ago. That was fantastic. But like, yeah, he does.
That was really good.
They do really good stuff there, and it's cool to see it starting to come out. And I think that's indicative that you even see some of like the big guys putting out like their own American single malts, that they see that something's happening.
Yeah.
So totally. I like it. I'm here for it.
Do you guys have anything you want to tell the audience out there that's going to be coming in the future that you can talk about, or that you just want to release here on this podcast alone?
We'll just beep it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I can literally beep out the whole thing.
How annoying would that be for people at home? They're like, so actually we're gonna
Let's do that. We'll just keep having regular banter and won't actually tell you, but you bleep.
Yeah.
All I can say for now is that our next release won't be until the late fall. It'll be something special that we've been working on for a long time.
Cool.
But in the meantime, this year we've really started to ramp up our private barrel program, and we usually we almost always buy a number of barrels from a distillery at one time, and usually 1 or 2 of them have a specific purpose. It's like, we're buying this lot, and this single cask is going into our next collection, which has some particular theme around it. And then the other ones are like, we'll use this for a blend, or maybe we'll just we'll wait and see what it's up to. And some of them have ended up in really good hands, and it's a way for people to get things that are very different than what you can normally get in a different process. It's different going to a distillery and saying, I want to do a barrel pick, versus going to an independent bottler, and then you get a collection of a bunch of different things from a whole bunch of different distilleries, and you don't even necessarily know what they are right away.
Okay, this might not be a question that I'm allowed to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So from that ghost distillery, the Missippii Memory, was there anything? Do you want to say if there's anything left over from that you might be doing something with, or?
We have a bunch of whiskey left over from it. So some of that is going into private barrals. Some of it is going into our Flung bourbon, and TBD. But we've got it. It was our biggest by a long shot. It was the most whiskey we've ever bought from one distillery. So.
Wow. And the did extremely well. Like, so every place that had it online sold out the day that it launched. There are still a few retailers in California and New York that have it, and some of them ship around the country. But like, we've had many things sell out before, but the reception to this has been different. Like people really resonated with the story of something like this is gone. It doesn't hurt that it's hazmat.
Right. And $90 on the shelf. Hazmat at $90 has been very
rare and amazing.
The other one that sold really fast, I think, was the last time was Tom's Foolery, right? That was so good.
That's the first one I heard about, actually. That was like the first time I heard of Lost Lantern.
Yeah. Jerm brought me a sample of that a couple weeks ago when I met up with him, and I'm like, I get it. I get why it sold out. Like, this is really good.
We were so excited by that because that's not a distillery that most people know, unless you've been in the scene for like more than 10 years, because they used to be covered pretty widely, but just kind of like they didn't ever plan to get really big. Mm-hmm. There are other places that like were a much larger scale. It's like basically like a French farm distillery, but in Ohio.
In Ohio,
and it feels really good to us when we get to introduce someone to a place like that. And then like I know people who discovered Tom's Foolery for us and are now just like chasing down every Tom's Foolery bottle they can get of their own stuff, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's me.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it. And now I'm on the Corbin Cash, and again. So I think so far they're all amazing, but I think the Leapers Fork. I had the Leapers last. Is that how you say it, Leapers?
Yep, Leapers Fork.
I had that last night. I was like, ask Adrian. We were sitting there kind of tasting. I was like, okay, I need to get. I'm buying
like,
this.
Wow, this is out of the 3 or 4 that we tried last night. That was his favorite. My favorite last night was the Union Horse. Yeah, that was my favorite.
Yeah,
I was driving until 11 p.m. So no, I didn't try anything. I went to bed.
So your favorite was a Mountain Dew or a glass of water.
Every gas station Red Bull I could find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious because obviously you all know the industry really well. If there were any distilleries in this collection that you would either never heard of or never had before.
Well, for me, probably all of them, because I'm very new to the game, so to speak.
Well, you guys introduced the name Corbin Cash. I'd never heard of until you guys. But then this is the first one I've ever tried from them. But then, like, I obviously researched them. I knew about Boulder. I'd heard about Rocktown. Leapers, I think I was the least familiar with in general.
Oh, you know what? Wait, I lied. I had heard of Woodinville.
Well, wouldn't
that one I had. That one I had heard of. Yeah,
they're the biggest distillery that we've ever worked with. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly bigger than New Riff.
Yeah.
So Rich Grain is the only one for me because I have a bottle of the rest of these somewhere.
Yeah.
I think
that's impressive.
That
is, isn't it though?
See, I knew we'd get him to name drop at some point. Just took an hour.
To say Rich Grain?
Well, just to say that I have a bottle of everything.
I live in Colorado. Rocktown, I was just at recently.
That is true.
High Wire, I drank a little too much last year at.
Okay.
Union Horse in Kansas. I drive through every single year because my friend lives right next to the distillery.
That's cool.
Corbin hurts my soul every time, but I love them because I was stationed out in California. So,
it's personal.
Yeah, and then Rich Grain. I had no idea. So, I mean, that's awesome, and I absolutely love that you guys are bringing distilleries like that from the past into the future and expressing it.
So the Corbin Cash bourbon, which I think Martin has, so 146 proof. Corbin Cash is best known for making an estate rye. It's a 100-year-old sweet potato farm that grows rye as a cover crop in the winter, and now distills it. But every once in a while, the owner goes next door to his neighbor's place and is like, "Hey, can I get some corn from your corn farm?" and makes bourbon out of it. So this is his neighbor's corn, his rye, a little bit of malt, and 7 years old. So pretty respectable age. I mean, not like you see Kentucky for older things, but one of the interesting things for craft whiskey for us in the last year or two is you're seeing a lot more stuff that is 6 to 8 years old, not like 3 to 5 or less than 3 anymore.
Yeah. Isn't it funny though? And you guys as also like Scotch drinkers as well, that they went the opposite way. Like you're starting to see like younger, single malt Scotch and stuff like you said, like Rassy and Ardnamurchan and even Ardbeg putting out a 5-year whiskey,
Right.
the Wheat Beastie a couple of years ago, and it's like it kind of flipped. You started to see all the American whiskeys getting older. The Scotch whiskeys are actually embracing stuff that's a little bit younger as well. So I think that's an interesting little flip that happened. I'm doing the
same thing as I'm doing the Corbin right now, and this is
It's not kidding with that proof, but I think it's surprisingly delicate for how strong it is.
It really is. It's phenomenal.
And I like to play with water and whiskey, and I think this one's going to take water pretty good, just to like see what it does to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we do just about everything at cast strength. Sometimes blends we proof down a little bit, but our general attitude is if it shows well at cast strength, put it out that way, because most of the people we're talking to, they know how they want to drink it, whether that's neat or with water or with ice. Like it's 85 degrees in Vermont today. Like I'm probably going to save this pour, and when we're done, I'm going to go put it on a rock and have the rest of it that way. And Nora is going to be like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you drinking that on a rock?"
I drink most things neat, but especially with our blend, we let when we're down to like the last 2 versions of the blend, we'll bring it home, we'll put it over a rock, taste it like that, and then let the ice melt and taste it at the very end, because we want to make sure that if someone inevitably does that, it hasn't totally fallen apart, that it still tastes good. And it helps that it's cast strength, that you can do that and it'll still taste good. But that's something that we always test for, because we know that people are going to do that, especially in the summer. And if something tastes bad at that point, they're going to assume that it was bad before. So that's an important part of the last step of our blending process.
Yeah. And I remember my dad, again, he's a Scotsman. And he drinks whiskey a lot too. And we were drinking, and I have like, and you got people on the podcast on this, but it's just like a little water drop, eyedropper. And I did that, and he just looks at me and goes, "What are you doing, son?" I'm just like, listen, I'm like, I get it. I'm like, I just like to see like what water does to something and like how it changes the flavor, if it brings something out a little bit more. But normally I will drink it. I will drink it completely neat. But I think that's cool that you guys do those kind of things, because you're right. Someone's going to do it. So to just be able to kind of play around with different ways of drinking whiskey is good. So, well,
what did you think of it with a little water from the Corbin?
You know what it did? So I had the note in my head. It was like Cinnamon Toast Crunch before. Now it's just like thick syrup. Like it's just with cinnamon in there. It just it actually thickened it up a little bit, which is interesting. But there's a note that I'm having a lot of trouble trying to pin down. I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is, but it's so good.
I think it's tasty. I like it.
Yeah. I'm the nerd with the tasting notes.
No, he's not. It's fine. Well, you guys, I think we've come to the end of it, and it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I have 0 words. I'm going to let Martin close us out, unless Adrian, you want to close us out this time.
No, that's all right.
Oh, okay, Martin.
No, not really.
Nope.
You guys want to do it? Honestly, guys, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. And like I said, I was talking to Jeremy. He's like, you're gonna have a great time. They're awesome people, and I've been a fan of your guys' stuff. I know all of us have been. So again, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us and trying and letting us get to try through some of this amazing whiskey. Also, as we do, give a shout out to our sponsors, 10th Mountain Whiskey. Go check them out. Where are they from again, Brian? Sorry. Sorry. Up in good old Gypsum, Colorado. And they are amazing. Go to their website. You can ask questions. You can get merch. You can get whiskey. How many states are they available in, Brian?
27.
27 states. So definitely go check them out. Good stuff. 10th Mountain Whiskey. 10thwhiskey.com. I don't have it in front of me.
10thwhiskey.com.
10thwhiskey.com. So yeah, definitely thank you again for sponsoring Bourbon with Friends.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Again, remember everybody out there, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Drink responsibly. Have a great day, night, or evening, wherever you're at around the world. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers.
That's it for this episode of Bourbon with Friends. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can also check us out on Instagram at Bwfpodcast. Thanks for listening.